Story 1. I've been a flight attendant for 8 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything. From drunk passengers to people trying to smuggle their emotional support peacocks onto planes. Nothing really surprises me anymore. But last Tuesday's flight from Chicago to Denver was something else entirely. I was working the morning shift on what should have been a routine 2-hour flight. The plane was pretty full, mostly business travelers and a few families heading out for spring break. Everything was going smoothly during boarding until I noticed her. She was probably in her 50s, wearing a designer tracksuit that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager," and carrying a purse that cost more than my monthly rent. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she had this look on her face like everyone around her was personally inconveniencing her just by existing. The trouble started when she stopped at row 12. There was a little boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, sitting in the window seat. He was traveling alone, which we call an unaccompanied minor. Sweet kid, very polite, and he had all his paperwork in order. His grandmother had dropped him off at the gate in Chicago, and his parents were picking him up in Denver. "Karen, excuse me, you're in my seat." The little boy looked up confused. He was clutching a small backpack and had his seat belt already fastened. "Little boy, I'm sorry, but this is my seat. See." He held up his boarding pass, which clearly showed 12A. I was standing nearby sorting through some safety cards when I heard the commotion. "Karen, no, I specifically requested a window seat because I have emotional needs that require me to see outside. I paid extra for this accommodation." "Me, ma'am, is there a problem here?" "Karen, yes, there's a huge problem. This child is in my seat. I have severe anxiety and claustrophobia, and I specifically paid for a window seat to help with my emotional distress during flights." I looked at her boarding pass. She was assigned to 12B, the middle seat right next to the little boy. "Me, according to your boarding pass, you're in seat 12B, which is right here next to the young gentleman. He has the window seat." "Karen, that's impossible. I called customer service 3 times and specifically explained my medical condition. They assured me I would get a window seat." "Me, I understand your frustration, but seat assignments are handled during booking or check-in. If you'd like, I can see if there are any other window seats available." I quickly scanned the plane. We were completely full, and every window seat was taken. The little boy was watching this whole exchange with wide eyes, probably wondering why this strange lady was trying to take his seat. "Karen, I don't want another seat. I want this seat. I have a medical condition that requires me to have this specific seat for my emotional well-being." "Me, ma'am, I understand you're upset, but this young man has a confirmed reservation for this seat. As an unaccompanied minor, he needs to stay in his assigned seat for safety reasons." That's when she completely lost it. "Karen, do you know how much money I spend on flights every year? I'm a platinum member. I have rights. This is discrimination against people with mental health conditions." She was getting louder, and other passengers were starting to stare. The little boy looked scared and confused. I could see him shrinking back into his seat. "Me, ma'am, I need you to lower your voice. You're frightening the other passengers." "Karen, I'm not moving until I get that window seat. I paid for emotional support accommodations." "Me, there's no such thing as paying for emotional support accommodations for seating. If you have a documented disability that requires specific accommodations, that would need to be arranged through our special services department in advance." "Karen, I shouldn't have to prove my medical conditions to you people. This is a violation of my privacy." The captain had come out of the cockpit to see what was happening. Other passengers were getting restless because we were supposed to take off in 10 minutes. "Captain, what seems to be the issue here?" "Me. This passenger is refusing to take her assigned seat and is demanding that the unaccompanied minor give up his window seat." "Karen, I have severe anxiety and claustrophobia. I need that window seat for my emotional stability. This is medical discrimination." "Captain, ma'am, I'm going to need you to either take your assigned seat or exit the aircraft. You're causing a disturbance and delaying our departure." Karen, you can't make me leave. I have a ticket. I know my rights. She then did something that made my jaw drop. She actually tried to physically move the little boy out of his seat. Karen, come on, sweetie, just move over to the middle seat. The nice lady needs to sit by the window. The little boy started crying and held onto his armrest. I immediately stepped in. Ma'am, do not touch that child. Step away from him right now. Karen, I'm not hurting him. I'm just trying to help him understand that adults have more important needs than children. That was it. I radioed for security while the captain called the gate agent. Within minutes, 2 airport security officers were boarding the plane. Security officer, ma'am, you need to come with us. Karen, this is outrageous. I'm being discriminated against because of my medical condition. I'm going to sue this airline. Security officer, you can file a complaint, but right now you need to exit the aircraft. As they were escorting her off, she was screaming about her platinum status and how she was going to have everyone fired. The little boy was still crying, so I sat with him for a few minutes. Are you okay, sweetie? Little boy, why was she so mean? Did I do something wrong? No, honey, you did absolutely nothing wrong. That lady was just having a bad day and forgot how to use her manners. I gave him an extra pack of cookies and made sure he was comfortable. The flight ended up being delayed by 45 minutes, but once we were in the air, everything went smoothly. The best part came 3 days later when my supervisor called me into her office. Apparently, Karen had indeed tried to file a complaint, claiming we discriminated against her medical condition and violated her rights as a platinum member. But here's the kicker: when the airline reviewed the security footage and witness statements, they discovered this wasn't her first incident. Over the past 2 years, she had been involved in 7 similar situations on various flights, always claiming medical conditions that required special accommodations that she had never actually requested or documented. She had been abusive to crew members, caused flight delays, and on one occasion had actually made a child cry because she wanted their seat. The airline's response was swift and decisive. They permanently banned her from flying with them and added her to the industry no-fly list. All her frequent flyer miles were forfeited, and her platinum status was revoked. My supervisor told me that when they called to inform her of the ban, she immediately demanded to speak to the airline's president and threatened to sue everyone from the CEO down to the baggage handlers. She apparently spent 20 minutes screaming about how she was being persecuted for her medical conditions. The little boy's parents sent a thank you card to the airline, praising the crew for protecting their son and handling the situation professionally. They even mentioned that he had a great flight experience despite the initial scare. Sometimes I wonder if Karen ever figured out that her behavior was the real problem, not her supposed medical condition. But knowing people like her, she probably just found a new airline to terrorize until they banned her too. At least now, the skies are a little bit safer for unaccompanied minors and flight attendants who just want to do their jobs without dealing with grown adults throwing tantrums worse than actual children. Story 2. I've been working as a server at Le Bernardin for 3 years now. It's one of those fancy places where people drop serious money for a meal, and honestly, I love my job. The pay is good, the kitchen team is amazing, and most customers are pretty decent. But every once in a while, you get someone who thinks they can game the system. I started working here right after my dad got sick. He needed expensive treatments, and my community college part-time job wasn't cutting it anymore. I had to drop out and find something that paid better. The head server here took a chance on me, even though I didn't have fine dining experience. I worked my butt off to learn everything about wine pairings, proper service, and how to handle difficult situations with grace. Last Tuesday started like any other day. I was covering the main dining room when this woman walked in for her reservation. She was probably in her 50s, wearing a designer dress and carrying a purse that cost more than I make in a month. She sat down at table 12 and immediately started complaining about the lighting, the temperature, and the music volume. Karen, this table is terrible. Can't you move me somewhere better? Karen, well, I guess it will have to do, but I'm not happy about it. She ordered our most expensive tasting menu and a bottle of wine that cost $400. The whole time I was serving her, she kept making comments about how the portions were small and how she'd been to better restaurants. Our chef takes pride in every single dish that leaves his kitchen, so her attitude was really getting to me. About halfway through her meal, she suddenly started yelling. Karen, excuse me? There's a hair in my food. This is absolutely disgusting. I rushed over to her table. She was pointing at her plate with this dramatic, horrified expression, like she'd found a dead mouse instead of what looked like a single strand of hair. I'm so sorry about this. Let me get the manager right away. Karen, you bet you will. I demand to speak to whoever's in charge. This is unacceptable. I could get sick from this. Our manager came over within seconds. He's this calm, professional guy who's been in the restaurant business for 20 years. He knows how to handle these situations. Manager, I sincerely apologize for this incident. We'll absolutely replace your dish and remove it from your bill. Karen, replace it. Replace it. Do you think I'm going to eat anything else from this kitchen after finding a hair in my food? I want my entire meal comped, plus gift cards for the inconvenience. This has completely ruined my evening. Manager, I understand you're upset, but our policy is to replace the affected dish and remove its charge. We maintain very high standards in our kitchen. Karen, your standards are clearly garbage if hair is ending up in the food. I'm going to leave reviews on every website. I'm going to tell everyone I know about this place. Unless you make this right, I'm going to destroy your reputation. The manager stayed calm, but I could see he was getting suspicious. The hair looked weird to me too. It was sitting perfectly on top of the sauce, not mixed in like it would be if it had fallen during cooking. Manager, let me speak with our chef about this situation. Our chef is this intense French guy who doesn't mess around. He came out of the kitchen looking serious, and I could tell he was not happy about the accusation. Chef, I understand there's been a complaint about hair in the food. Which dish was it? Karen, the duck confit. There was a long black hair right in the middle of it. It's still there, look. The chef examined the plate carefully. Then he looked at Karen, then back at the plate. Chef, interesting. You see, we have security cameras throughout our kitchen that record everything. Every dish is plated under these cameras. Would you like me to review the footage of your dish being prepared? Karen's face went a little pale, but she doubled down. Karen, I don't care about your cameras. There's a hair in my food right now. Chef, of course. Let me pull up the footage on my tablet. He disappeared for a few minutes and came back with his tablet. Our manager, Karen, and I all watched as he played the video. You could see the entire process of her dish being made. Every step was recorded in high definition. The duck was perfectly plated, the sauce was carefully drizzled, and the garnish was placed with precision. Not a single hair anywhere. Chef, as you can see, the dish left our kitchen exactly as it appears in this video. Clean, perfect, and definitely without any hair. Karen, that doesn't prove anything. The hair could have fallen after it left the kitchen. Chef, actually, it does prove something. You see, I also checked our staff records. Every person who touched your dish tonight has short hair and was wearing a hairnet and cap. The hair on your plate is long and black. None of our staff have long black hair. The manager looked directly at Karen. Manager, ma'am, are you suggesting that someone on our staff deliberately put a hair in your food after it left the kitchen? Karen, I don't know how it got there, but it's there. Chef, there's one more thing. Our cameras also cover the dining room. Would you like me to check the footage from your table? Karen suddenly stood up, her face bright red. Karen, this is ridiculous. I'm a paying customer and you're treating me like a criminal. I'm leaving. Manager, that's probably best. And just so you know, we'll be posting about this incident on our social media channels. We believe in transparency with our customers about people who try to scam us. Karen, you can't do that. That's defamation. Manager, it's not defamation when we have video evidence. Have a good evening. Karen stormed out, leaving her expensive purse behind in her rush. She had to come back 5 minutes later to get it, which was pretty embarrassing. The next day, our restaurant's Instagram posted a video compilation. It showed Karen's dish being prepared, then cut to security footage of her clearly placing something on her plate when she thought no one was looking. The caption read, "We take food safety seriously. We also take fraud seriously. This customer attempted to scam us with a fake hair complaint. Our cameras don't lie." The video went viral. It got thousands of views and hundreds of comments from people sharing their own stories about entitled customers. Even other restaurants started commenting with their support. A few days later, I heard through the grapevine that Karen had tried the same scam at 2 other high-end restaurants in the city. Word gets around fast in the restaurant industry, and now she's basically banned from every decent place in town. The best part? That expensive bottle of wine she ordered. She had already finished most of it before her fake hair discovery. So she essentially paid $400 to get publicly humiliated on social media. Sometimes justice really does serve itself. Story 3. My wife and I are still processing the whole thing, and honestly, it feels surreal even writing this out. Let me start with some background. I'm 28, and I work as a project manager at a tech company. My wife is 26 and teaches elementary school. We've been planning our wedding for over a year, and everything was going perfectly until the day of the ceremony. The trouble started about 3 months before our wedding when we announced we were expecting our first child. We decided to share the baby's name early because we were so excited. We chose the name Isabella for our daughter. It's a beautiful name that means so much to us. It was my grandmother's name, and my wife had always loved it too. We thought it was perfect. What we didn't know was that my wife's former coworker from her previous school had some kind of weird obsession with that name. This woman had left the school 2 years ago after some drama with the administration, but she somehow heard about our baby announcement through mutual friends. I'd never met her personally, but my wife had mentioned her a few times as someone who was always starting problems at work. The first sign of trouble came when this woman started commenting on our social media posts about the pregnancy. She would write things like, "That's my baby's name," and "You can't use that name." At first, we thought she was joking or maybe just being weird. My wife told me she'd always been a bit strange, but we never imagined it would escalate. Then she started messaging my wife directly, demanding that we change our baby's name. She claimed she had called dibs on Isabella years ago and that we were stealing it from her. The messages got more and more aggressive. She said things like, "I've been planning to name my daughter Isabella since I was 12, and you're ruining my life by taking my name." My wife tried to reason with her at first, explaining that you can't own a name and that Isabella was my grandmother's name. But this woman wouldn't listen. She kept insisting that we were deliberately trying to hurt her and that we needed to pick something else. We eventually blocked her on all social media, but she kept creating new accounts to harass us. She even somehow got my phone number and started calling me at work. I had to explain to my boss why some random woman was calling our office screaming about baby names. The harassment got so bad that we considered filing a police report, but we figured she'd eventually give up and leave us alone. We were wrong. Our wedding day was beautiful. The ceremony was at a lovely outdoor venue with about 100 guests. Everything was perfect, the weather was nice, the flowers looked amazing, and our families were all there celebrating with us. I was standing at the altar watching my beautiful bride walk down the aisle when the unthinkable happened. Right in the middle of the ceremony, just as the officiant was asking if anyone objected to our union, this woman came charging in from the back of the venue. She was screaming at the top of her lungs, "Karen, you can't get married. She's a name thief. She stole my baby's name." Everyone turned around in shock. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife's face went white, and I could see she was trying not to cry. Our guests were all staring in confusion. The officiant tried to continue, but this woman kept screaming. "Karen, Isabella is my name. I claimed it first. You can't use it." She started marching toward the altar, and that's when things got really crazy. She grabbed one of the centerpieces from a nearby table, a heavy glass vase with flowers, and hurled it toward us. Thankfully, it missed and shattered on the ground, but the sound of breaking glass made everyone gasp. My groomsmen immediately jumped into action, but before they could reach her, she grabbed another centerpiece and threw it too. This one hit one of the decorative columns near the altar. Flower petals and glass were everywhere. "Karen, she's ruining my life. That's my daughter's name, mine." The venue security guards came running over, but she was like a wild animal. She kept screaming about the name while they tried to restrain her. She was kicking and flailing, knocking over chairs and decorations. Security guard, "Ma'am, you need to leave immediately or we're calling the police." "Karen, call them. Tell them about the name thieves. They're stealing from me." It took 3 security guards to drag her out of the venue. Even as they carried her away, she was still screaming about how we'd stolen her baby's name. Our guests were all standing there in stunned silence, with some of the older relatives looking absolutely mortified. My wife was crying by this point, and I was furious. This was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, and this unhinged woman had turned it into a nightmare. The officiant asked if we wanted to take a break, but my wife said she wanted to continue. She was determined not to let this woman ruin our wedding completely. We managed to finish the ceremony, but the mood was definitely different. Everyone was on edge, wondering if she might come back. The reception was more subdued than we'd planned, with people constantly looking toward the entrances. The next day, we called a lawyer. We'd had enough of this woman's harassment, and throwing things at our wedding was the last straw. Our lawyer helped us file for a restraining order, which was approved immediately given the clear evidence of harassment and the public disturbance at our wedding. The restraining order was served to her 3 days later. According to the process server, she completely lost it when she received the papers. She started ranting about how we were the criminals and that she was the victim. She even tried to call the courthouse to complain, but they just told her to speak to her own lawyer. We also found out that she'd been posting about our wedding on various social media platforms, claiming we'd attacked her for trying to protect her intellectual property. She actually used those words, intellectual property, about a baby name. The posts were so unhinged that several people who knew us reached out to offer support and share screenshots. The best part came a few weeks later when we learned that she'd never even been pregnant. Apparently, she'd been telling people for years that she was trying to conceive and had already picked out the name Isabella for her future daughter. But according to mutual friends, she'd been single for over 5 years and wasn't even dating anyone. She'd built this entire fantasy around a baby that didn't exist. Our daughter was born 4 months later, and yes, we named her Isabella. It's still my grandmother's name, and it's still perfect for our little girl. We sent out birth announcements to all our friends and family, and everyone was so supportive. A few people even joked that they were glad we didn't let the name police win. We haven't heard from that woman since the restraining order was served. Hopefully, she's gotten the help she clearly needs and has moved on with her life. But I still can't believe that someone would crash a wedding over a baby name. The whole thing was absolutely insane. Looking back, I'm just grateful that security was there and that nobody got seriously hurt. Our wedding photos are still beautiful, and we have a crazy story to tell our daughter when she's older, but I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone. Story 4. I never thought I'd be dealing with property disputes when I bought my first house 3 years ago. I'm a software developer who works from home, and I specifically chose this quiet neighborhood because I wanted peace and privacy. The house was perfect, a small 2-bedroom with a decent backyard where I could set up my home office and maybe start a garden someday. For the first 2 years, everything was great. My neighbor on the left side was an elderly gentleman who kept to himself and maintained his lawn beautifully. We'd wave at each other when we saw each other outside, but that was about it. Then he passed away last winter, and his house sat empty for months until someone finally bought it in early spring. That's when my problem started. The new neighbor was a woman in her 50s who seemed friendly enough at first. She introduced herself over the fence one Saturday morning while I was working in my yard. Hi there, I'm your new neighbor. Just wanted to say hello. Me, nice to meet you. Welcome to the neighborhood. Thanks. I'm so excited to finally have my own place. I've been renting for years, and now I can finally do whatever I want with my property. At the time, I thought that was a normal thing to say. I had no idea what whatever I want would actually mean. The first sign of trouble came about 2 weeks later. I was working at my desk when I heard loud machinery outside. I looked out my window and saw a construction crew in her backyard. They were digging holes and setting up what looked like fence posts. I figured she was putting in a privacy fence, which was perfectly reasonable. But then I noticed something odd. The fence line seemed to be going right through the middle of what I always considered my side yard. There was a large oak tree that had always been clearly on my property, and now it looked like it was going to be on her side of the fence. I decided to go outside and take a closer look. When I walked around to the side of my house, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The fence was definitely being built on my land, not just a little bit over the property line, but significantly into my yard. I approached one of the workers. Excuse me, can you tell me where the property line is supposed to be? Worker, lady inside said it was right here. We're just following the markers she put down. I think there might be a mistake. This looks like it's on my property. Worker, you'll have to talk to her about that. We just build where we're told. So I walked over to her house and knocked on the door. She answered with a big smile that quickly faded when she saw my expression. Hi, I wanted to talk to you about the fence you're having built. What about it? I think there might be a problem with the property line. It looks like it's being built on my land. Oh no, that's definitely my property. I had it all measured out. Are you sure? Because that oak tree has always been on my side, and now it's going to be enclosed in your yard. Well, I guess you were wrong about where your property ended. The tree is definitely on my side. I could feel my frustration building, but I tried to stay calm. I think we should both check our property deeds to make sure. I have mine inside if you want to compare. I don't need to check anything. I know where my property line is. Maybe you should have paid more attention when you bought your house. That was the end of our conversation. She basically shut the door in my face. The next day, the fence was finished, and if that wasn't bad enough, she had installed a large sign that read, "Private area no entry," right next to my driveway. Every time I came home, I had to look at this sign that was clearly on my property. I tried talking to her 2 more times over the next week, but she became increasingly hostile each time. Look, I'm tired of you harassing me about this. The fence is on my property, end of discussion. I'm not harassing you. I'm trying to resolve this peacefully before it becomes a bigger problem. The only problem here is you not accepting reality. Maybe you should move somewhere else if you don't like having neighbors who know their property boundaries. That's when I decided I had no choice but to get a professional surveyor involved. I called around and found a licensed surveyor who could come out within the week. It cost me $800, but I needed to know for sure. The surveyor spent about 3 hours measuring and checking records. When he was done, he came to my door with his report. Surveyor, well, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that you were absolutely right. The bad news is that her fence is actually 3 feet into your property at the deepest point. 3 feet? Are you sure? Surveyor, completely sure. I've got all the measurements here, and I checked them twice. According to the county records and my measurements, about 30 feet of that fence is on your land. I felt vindicated, but also dreaded the conversation I was about to have. I walked over to her house with the surveyor's report in hand. I have the surveyor's report. The fence is 3 feet into my property. That's impossible. Your surveyor is wrong. Me, he's a licensed professional. He checked county records and everything. Her, I don't care what some random guy with a measuring tape says. The fence stays where it is. Me, this is an official survey. You need to move the fence. Her, make me. So I did. I contacted a property law attorney and filed a formal complaint. The legal process took about 6 weeks, but the outcome was exactly what I expected. The judge ruled that the fence had to be removed immediately and that she had to pay all my legal costs plus the surveyor fees. But she still wasn't done being difficult. Her, fine, I'll move your precious fence, but I'm not paying for anything. My attorney had to get a court order to force her to pay. When she finally did move the fence, she had it installed exactly on the property line, but she made sure to build it as tall as legally allowed and painted her side bright orange facing my house. The best part came a few months later. Apparently, she had done the same thing to her neighbor on the other side, built a shed that was partially on their property. But that neighbor didn't try to resolve it peacefully like I did. They went straight to the city code enforcement office. It turns out that when you build structures on other people's property without permits, the city takes it very seriously. She ended up with hefty fines and had to tear down the entire shed. She also had to pay for a professional survey of her entire property to make sure she wasn't encroaching anywhere else. From my window, I watched as she supervised the demolition of her shed, looking absolutely furious the entire time. She never apologized to me, never acknowledged that she was wrong, and still glares at me whenever she sees me outside. But every time I look at that orange fence, I can't help but smile. It's a daily reminder that sometimes standing up for yourself, even when it's difficult and expensive, is absolutely worth it. And I learned that some people will try to take advantage of you if you let them, but they usually back down pretty quickly when they realize you're not going to be pushed around. The whole experience cost me about $3,000 in legal fees and surveyor costs, but she had to pay me back every penny, plus interest. And now I have a very clear understanding of exactly where my property ends and hers begins.